We wanted to portray the issue of deforestation, British deforestation.
So we started production after conceptualizing the idea.
So we ended up with the story of a construction site and its tearing down of the forest and consequently homes of the forest's animals. In a way that can show human actions and their direct consequences on British wildlife.
So wrote the script, which was then looked over and changed by other members of the group. This meant we ended up with a script that everyone was happy to work on. It also probably helped to make the story more interesting, as there was more flow of ideas between people. Once we had the script and storyboard done, we went on to design the characters.
Originally, we wanted to make the dad a wealthy businessman who came to oversee the building process of a new business park for his company. So his original design was going to be a rich businessman that had very little regard for wildlife and nature. But after some discussion, we changed the character into a construction worker who's just doing his job. I made the design of the little girl to reflect her love of nature and her innocence through the earthy tones in her clothes and her large, joy-filled eyes, just so that we can show that she is very innocent in her way of thinking and she believes that everything deserves to be happy.
From the storyboard, I redrew the animatic instead of putting them into Premiere and moving the parts that should. This is because it was more time consuming. The first draft of the animatic was done on Premiere, where I would take the scanned copies of the storyboard, separate the moving elements for each scene into different layers. Instead, I just drew in Pencil 2D and redrew the storyboard as keyframes.
Okay. So I'm doing the animatic, a rough animatic in Premiere Pro. And I've got a folder for all the separate frames, which I drew in the storyboard and I separated them on different layers so I could animate them, or roughly animate, like do transitions in Premiere. I've done it so each scene is a different folder, so like if I open up a folder, it'd be all the parts to it, and that's each part. And then I did the movement in the FX, mostly doing position, scale and rotation, and it gives like this kind of effect, but it's very rough, but it gives you an idea of like the flow of the animation, like the speed.
Once I started doing the animatic, I realised that some of the timings were off and we had to change or remove some of the scenes.
As a group, we actually didn't have much skill with making background art, so to get around this, we decided to experiment a bit with the stylization and the contrast between the characters and the background. In the end, we decided to make a more muted background so that the characters can stand out with the brighter colours compared to the more toned down colours of the background, which would be the forest and, in the end, the field and the business park.
It was my job to draw and animate the squirrel. So I spent some time practicing drawing squirrels, as well as watching nature documentaries with squirrels in them to try and study their movement.
For the main animation process, I used Clip Studio Paint, and we exported the animation as an image sequence in the PNG format, so we have the alpha channels and transparency maintained. During composition, we decided to just take any clips that we can perhaps reuse, like walk cycles, and paste them wherever we need them, and then scale them to their appropriate size. This in turn shortened the amount of animation that we needed to make.
Gaston started editing the animatic from his storyboard, then I took over from him as he needed to do some of the squirrel drawings and backgrounds. I then edited some detailed background drawings into the third draft of the animatic. I modified some of the rough animations that were provided by Gaston. I edited the third draft of the animatic, which was rough but looked better digitalized and drawn. The previous animatic was sketch drawings which were placed to predict the timings.
I also got some live footage of squirrels in the woods, but it was hard to use as reference as they were quite fast and hard to keep track and focus on.
Caroline has put together this production bible by adding content and has changed the layout with my guidance. We, Spooky Tree Productions, pitched our work in front of an audience to get their opinion on our idea, and it was very useful to improve our production. In editing, I connected the animations and backgrounds together which were provided. It was time consuming to edit all the drawings etc. together, and many sections were not initially complete, so I updated the team with the missing items in order to tie everything together to a sub-completion stage. I drew some of the missing animations in order to complete that section of the video. In hindsight, if I was to do this project again, I would organise our time in order to give us a better schedule to complete this project to the best of our abilities.